Hi, I'm Nate.
I'm Noah.
And welcome back to another chat episode of Talking Lion. We just released a song called We're Fine, and we wanted to do a deep dive into this song. We actually started it 5 years ago, November of 2015, and it's taken a very interesting journey over the course of its creation. Likewise, it's one of the first songs we've put out in a while where Noah and I were 100% the writing production on it. So we want to go through the song, each line, each part, and really show you how this song came together over the course of 5 years. So,
Without further ado,
this is Talking Lion. We're Fine exists.
it's out in the world.
It's out in the world.
That's absolutely wild.
You, listener, can listen to it now,
on
which is...
Tidal, if you want to.
You could listen to it on SoundCloud.
You can listen to it on
Spotify.
Amazon Music. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
listen to it on Spotify, please, I guess.
Or
but
Apple Music.
Apple Music works.
Listen to it anywhere. But it's really weird that it exists now in the world because we've been sitting on this song for pretty much 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
You know, we were talking about it. Like when we started it, you were 18, I was 19.
Yeah.
Like we were babies.
We were little babies. We didn't know anything.
What's interesting thematically about the song, we're going to dive into it for sure, but because of how it was written, it winds up spanning two relationships. For me, that at the start of writing the song, I was just at the end of the first one. So it's just interesting that like this song, in a sense, sort of we were able to communicate with it, and it communicated with us, and sort of grew in that way.
Now that I'm thinking about it, when we started writing the song, I was probably relating it very much to my first relationship in my head. And then I guess in a sense it grew to represent my second. And now at the time when it's come out, it sort of relates to my third relationship. And hopefully one day I'll explore that through the verse writing process.
Oh, yeah. Well,
we can talk about that later.
I mean, happy to talk about it now. One of the things that we might wind up doing that I'm really excited about is because we both have these sort of fledgling solo projects that we're working on. We're still doing Sleeping Lion, but we're also exploring, individually the music that we make. We thought it'd be interesting because this song, like We're Fine, covers two relationships, but I've had another one since that ended that I wrote a verse about, that my project would have its sonic palette do a version with this new verse, and Noah with his sonic palette would do a kind of remix, a Music for Birds remix, of with his verses. Which I'm excited to hear, just because you're a great writer.
Yeah, it's a daunting challenge, but I've the initial seed of the idea for what these verses would look like has been sprung. So
the gauntlet has been thrown.
The gauntlet has been thrown.
But I wanna set the scene for the listener. It's November 2015. Noah and I are in a dorm in Boston. It's one room, so we share a room with a third roommate. My desk is against one wall and his desk is against the other wall with a little keyboard on it. My bed is tucked on the other wall, and
I'm on the top bunk
of a bunk bed on the opposite end. So sort of four quadrants of this room. It's cold because we're in Boston. My girlfriend at the time had just moved to Paris, and we broke up and had sort of stopped talking. And we just started Sleeping Lion. And, in a lot of ways, I mean, we put out You Made Me on YouTube, September 17th, 2015. We put out Rug, which was our first DSP streaming single. Yeah. November of 2015. So we were just
starting out. The project was like barely anything yet.
I remember you playing the two chords, the D flat with the 7.
Yeah.
And the A flat with the 7.
On an electric piano sound.
On an electric piano sound. I remember it was really pretty. But you were playing it in 4.
Yeah.
And I kind of asked you to teach me the chords, and I sat down and... You keep saying always, baby, that's a long time. Waiting for calculate the time, so count the days till you're home. Spend some time. You keep saying always, baby, that's a long time. Waiting for your airplane to touch down on the runway and catch your eye. You keep saying always, but baby, that's a long time. Down the middle of the night, saying we're fine, we're fine, we're fine, we're fine, always. Baby, that's a long time. Pacing around the house, us in the middle of the night, saying we're fine. I mean, it took a couple minutes, but it was there.
Yeah, that chorus came together pretty quick. I remember
it felt really, really indicative of this time that I had with my very recent ex, and just some of the conversations her and I had before she moved to Paris. But yeah, what's interesting is that because it was in 4, we were trying to write these verses and everything like that, and it had nothing. It looked and sounded nothing like what it was. It was
seen this tape loop. Didn't realize it was playing on repeat till I saw you. Getting on the plane to leave, you're in your seat, so I called you. I was greeted by your answering machine, a blank screen in a dark room.
And what I really appreciate about the production in the one that's out now is that the song starts with like a sound of like a VCR or something. Just paying very quiet respects to that original verse.
Yeah, the tape sound.
The idea of the tape loop.
Tape looping.
But the chorus was there, and I almost like I think I wrote two kind of bridges. One was an interpolation of like
right.
God only knows, and then the other one was.
Oh, I now wouldn't mind waiting.
Did you write a second verse?
You woke up crying one night when you visited New York. You thought we were doing all right, but you were unsure. If we could keep it up when you move farther. You asked me if it was wanted to be together. Not that I didn't want to answer, it's that I didn't know how. Know what I don't know about tomorrow, let alone a year from now.
But it is interesting that like what stayed was this chorus and this bridge.
Right.
Because I feel like the ending, now a bridge is an outro essentially.
Yeah.
But there is something really like that I think stuck with us over the years of just like there's a lot of perspective in that line. I know right now I wouldn't mind waiting around. We both have our lives to live. The tense changes, like the first go around, it's we both had our lives to live, and then it goes we both have our lives to live. You know, recognizing these sort of like cycles. But now I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because we dropped the song after, you know, because it was stupid. Like we dropped it because it was this 4/4 thing.
Yeah, it was just never felt like a fully realized song.
But there was a chorus.
I always liked the chorus. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just like I remember kind of like I feel like it wasn't even necessarily an argument, but I remember at one point kind of somewhat annoyedly saying like it's not a song to
Yeah.
you. I forget the context specifically in which, but I remember you being like, "Oh, we got this song." I'm like, "Well, it's not a song." Like,
Which
like,
I took to heart. Like I think one of the things that we learned in those early years was like how to drop something, like how to
Yeah.
just move on. We were very sacred with our stuff, but we also knew when something wasn't working.
yeah. And that was one of the songs that always just like, yeah, I love that chorus, but like it doesn't feel like a thing.
So then years pass.
Yeah, literally years pass.
Which is so funny. What we used to do when we were at the beginning of Sleeping Lion is Noah would make, because we were remote for a good chunk of it. He was in Rome, I was in New York. So he would make these grooves. There would be these like 30-second things that I would like top line before we learned that we both didn't necessarily love doing that as like a
Right.
song creation process. But he would send these grooves over. And what's so interesting is that like I, you know, wrote the chorus after girlfriend number 1 went to Paris, got into another relationship. That relationship ended and I moved to Los Angeles. So at this point, it's like November of 2017. So 2 years since that first time. And I remember you sent me a groove.
Well, okay, here's the thing. The beat we actually started together in our old apartment in Boston. I remember this moment very specifically. I remember the moment when it happened. I'd been working all day on a beat that I started. I just downloaded Analog Strings by Output, and I was playing around with some of the sounds. And I was like messing around with these voicings, and you came into my room and you were like, "Oh, that's a really cool sound." And then you're like, "Can I play around with that patch for a second?" And you started playing the chords to We're Fine. And this beat that this like groove that I was working on was in 6/8, and you started singing "We're Fine" over it. And you're like, "What if this song was in 6/8?" And I was just like, I don't really know about that. Like that seems like a lot. I I don't know, but like, sure, go for it. And then I kind of fleshed it out tentatively as like, this is the new We're Fine beat, but also like, we kind of were like, maybe it's just a different song with the same chords. And I kind of sat on that beat for a while, but then it ended up in the groove pack.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like I forgot about that interaction. So when I heard the song, like when you sent it over, I don't know if you named it We're Fine or just like Groove 18.
Yeah,
or
I think
whatever.
I named it something nondescript because it was like, even though you played the chords to We're Fine and sang We're Fine over it, and we're like, this kind of works in 6. It was also like, well, it's still different enough that it could be an entirely new song.
Well, I remember just being in my car on the way to meeting up with a friend of mine at Crave Cafe, and that groove went up, and those chords were just so familiar to me that even though it wasn't labeled We're Fine, I immediately started trying to sing it over
Right.
this thing. And I remember texting you like, I'm like, I think we can do We're Fine in 6. So I think I recorded like maybe a voice memo or something to send over of like, this is what it's going to be. I remember kind of racing home from my friend's place and essentially writing that first verse.
The first time you stayed at my house in New York, yeah, you woke me up. Caught in a panic that when you left for Paris, we'd be breaking up.
Right.
Because it became really, really clear with 2 years of perspective that this song had to be one like lived in and feel really, really specific to the experience.
Yeah.
And so that whole story of her coming to New York and staying over and having a panic about the relationship and how I think I answered the question really poorly because she was like, do you think we'd make it through? And I said, I don't know because that's a really long time to think about. And I'm, 18 or 19.
Right.
So and in that sense, it just kind of poured out. And I think the line that felt the most real to me was like, I'm doing time zone math in my head and whispering under my breath.
I'm doing time zone math in my head and whispering under my breath.
Right.
Because that's just like, that was the whole thing. That was the whole crux of the argument. So then we had the track, we had a verse, we maybe had a bridge.
Yeah.
or some ending section. And then that was it. Again, we kind of put it on hold.
You didn't try to write a second verse, did you?
I had such a the first verse poured out and I didn't necessarily know where to go
Right.
from there. Like I didn't know whether it was worth talking about this relationship again or like what I didn't realize what the song was supposed to be. It wasn't necessarily speaking me past that verse. And I almost thought the song could be like a short thing where it was like, we do the chorus, we do the verse, we do the chorus, we do the ending.
Yeah.
But also, it was before we felt comfortable putting out anything that short.
Right.
And also just, at the time, we were working on Easy for You.
Right.
At the time, like we were doing very pop heavy writing sessions and it felt more like a ballad.
Yeah.
Or, even that guitar line was very sort of 1975 influence. And in general, their influence on us was waning as well.
Yeah.
But it always stuck with us. We had this project we were going to do called Harbor.
Right.
Harbor was going to be like all of these kind of demos that never saw the light of day. We were just going to sort of throw out. And We're Fine was going to be in that mix. In a lot of ways, I think Harbor echoes into Different Plans.
Yeah.
Like Different Plans
definitely.
is that ethos plus time and money.
Yeah.
And friends and good friends. But because it was part of the Harbor project, it kind of became our focus when we went to Big Bear.
Right.
December of 2018. So now 3 years. And about a year since the first verse was made.
Right.
And what I love about that Big Bear trip was that, there was no pressure, there was no anything. We just set up the keyboard. We drank a lot.
Yeah.
We wrote What I Get in that space as well.
Yeah, we had a Harbor day. We were like, this is the day where we're going to work on all the Harbor stuff and just get it out of the way.
So, with a couple drinks in us, kind of went to work on the second verse.
Yeah, what was that experience like? Like writing, how do you remember writing the second verse of We're Fine?
Again, I was kind of just like a little bit tired, a little bit drunk.
Yeah. I remember being completely out of it. That's why I asked.
Right. Well, I think it was that one of the songs on Harbor was actually going to be this sort of like compilation song, like this like 8-minute song. We backtrack on ourselves so much, it's wild. But like we were gonna make with Stop It a whole record. Stop It was actually like in our heads, a single off of a bigger project. In 2017, the idea was that it was going to be this concept record of like all these stages of a breakup and very experimental. We decided that that wasn't necessarily what we should do as a band, but we thought that maybe we should give it a try for Harbor. So we did actually kind of like hash out these feelings that I had about this second relationship in a way that I hadn't thought about in years. And so my brain was kind of in that place and realizing, oh, I actually made the same mistake twice of just not being able to give somebody certainty. There's that line, moved in with someone and fell far too slowly for her to feel we could be safe.
Moved in with someone but fell far too slowly for her to feel we could be safe.
I mean, we didn't really move in. She just spent a lot of time at our place. It just, the writing is easier. But once it became clear that that was what the second verse was about, was this repeating of mistakes, that was when it really struck me. But when I'm like, oh, this is something that we could maybe take seriously, was the last line. And that was a sort of thing that poured out. I was just writing, I was going through, like, I'm lying there with her, just trying to convince her fears aren't justified.
I'm lying there with her, just trying to convince her fears aren't justified.
And that was going to be it. But then I like the pen took over, kind of thing.
Right.
And because again, I was drunk. I was just like, sort of spewing my consciousness. Like, I'm trying to convince her fears aren't justified, but I'm like, that's not how she would take that information. She would reply.
Right.
And she would throw back what I've said in my face.
Right.
And that was when the song kind of came to life for me. It's like she replied, "You keep saying always, but baby, that's a long time."
Lying there with her, just trying to convince her fears aren't justified. But she replies, "You keep saying always."
And that really.
Love a good chorus flip.
I remember freaking out though. Do you remember like I was on the couch and I was just writing. I'm like, Noah, I think
Right.
it just adds like a level of anger, like dimension to it. I think one of my favorite little details though is that after that second breakup, you introduced me to this show called You're the Worst.
Right. That show was a recommendation from my mother. I forget what, must have been December, or winter break of 2017, maybe? I think it was. My mom was just like, there's this new sitcom. It's called You're the Worst. You have to check it out. And I binged the first 3 seasons, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, that show is just masterfully put together, effortlessly funny, and so sharp, and rips your heart out in a million different ways. And immediately after watching that show, I became a You're the Worst evangelist. And to everyone I know, that was the getting into a new relationship. It's like, you haven't heard, it was in my Tinder bio. It was like, I'm looking for the Gretchen to my Jimmy. It became a huge part of my life.
It was my breakup content. It was like the thing that in a weird way kind of got me through.
Yeah. And I knew it was a show that you would really really, really like. So I got to bring it to you and be like, Nate, watch this show, and get to see, I watched it a second time with you.
Yeah.
And got to watch it anew through your eyes, and watch you freak out at just how good the writing is and how all the callbacks tie back into each other. And it it reinforced how much I love the show, and it also became a nice part of our friendship.
And on top of that, we even chose where we wanted to live in Los Angeles based on the show. We were in a weird way, I think about that show and the ripples it's had on our lives throughout. And I think one of our favorite scenes in the show was in a later season. There's an argument, and one of the main characters says, "You knew I was a snake when you picked me up. You don't get to be mad."
Right.
And that's a reference to, I think, like a Aesop fable.
Yeah.
The idea being if you know the nature of something, you don't have the right to be surprised by it.
Right.
But again, sort of as a drunken joke, I'm I keep repeating mistakes like they're new for me to make. I was like, what if you were you knew I was a snake? And it kind of, I think it hit both of us. And what I liked about it was that it was this kind of dialogue.
Right.
That it was whether or not it's you literally asking, you literally filling in the sort of blanks, or just another part of my brain being hey, you don't get to be mad.
Right.
Or why would you be mad at yourself? Or whatever. And what's actually really cool about the actual final record is we called up girlfriend number 1.
Right.
Who will be unnamed. Because we're good friends now. We're chilling. And, I showed her the song, kind of explained the premise, and she recorded herself saying, "You knew I was a snake." Verse 1 girl is on the second verse, kind of dialectic.
Right. Yeah, and I like how the production in the song reflects it's kind of this otherworldly, almost demonic voice that kind of highlights that it is this maybe dark part of your brain, or it's a distortion of the person who you're talking to, being hey, like, you knew it was a snake when you picked me up.
Well, we used to assign so much meaning to vocal production. Like
Yeah.
in our first record, we were really adamant about only using a vocoder if it was signifying depression,
Right.
like signifying, this other part of you that's both enhancing and hurting you. And I feel like we don't sort of as explicitly follow that now. It's a little just harder, I think.
Yeah.
And also vocoders in general have become a bit, overdone in the production world. But yeah, you're right. I love how it is this otherworldly thing because it is a darker part of you. You don't have the right to be mad at yourself, and also nobody has the right to be mad at you.
Right.
This kind of weirdly, vindictive voice. That also happens to be a blend of our voices.
Right.
And my ex-girlfriend. But what I like about the process of the song is that once we actually did finish it in Big Bear, and we didn't know if Harbor was going to happen, so it kind of just we weren't sure if it was going to come out or how it was going to come out or what the world would be for it. We knew we wanted to make changes to the production, but we didn't know what it needed. We did play it live
Right.
once, and we played it actually with a lira player.
Oh, right. I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
at Hotel Cafe, we did a show with Evangelia, and she had a lira player, and so he actually played along, and we're like, oh, this would sound nice with other instruments.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, playing it live kind of fed into itself. So I think we first called up my old college roommate, Scott, and he played horns. And the horns alone were just so pretty.
Yeah.
He had these really nice melody lines playing throughout. But of course we started playing the song live more. So Jacob, of course, got involved.
Right.
And so then Jacob playing drums. I think my favorite part about working with Jacob is that he will always do exactly as far as you ask. But if you let him go off the rails, he will go.
Yeah.
So he had great drum parts, but they were safe drum parts. And then when we told him to finally go off, that fill at the end.
Yeah, that fill at the ending is fucking wild.
What was your mentality as this sort of production started turning into this organic piece?
I forgot about the show, the Hotel Cafe show where we played it acoustic, but now that you bring it up, I remember because this was just a beat. We originally wrote it on the electric piano, and in my brain it was going to be more of a Kevin Garrett, Jack Garrett kind of soulful thing back when it was in 4, and then it became this really electronic, vocal choppy, really hard hitting electronic drums, kind of 1975-y vibey electronic thing, and then it wasn't until we played it acoustically with a Greek lira and just sitting with it on the guitar, being oh, this song is and also working out the vocal arrangement and doing the harmonies with you and I, being oh, this song really works as just a really pretty folk song. And even though it was months after that, before we actually got into the nitty gritty, I always had in my head oh yeah, this song needs to have a beating heart sonically. It can't just be this slick electronic thing. It needs to feel as lived in as the lyrics are. So I think that was one of those things where going in, I was I knew I wanted to have acoustic guitar in there. And yeah, just organically as we started adding all of these instruments, it just felt really natural to just be to have it sound almost like a pop punk record, or certain more a folk punk record with big drums and gang vocals, to take it out of this electronic world and into this new kind of just organic space.
Well, I think we were both so surprised and even floored by how nice it was to play acoustically.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't have that opportunity when it was just the song, but when we finally played it live, we didn't have a track, so we just played it. You were on guitar, we had the lira, I was on the piano, and it was so nice. I think the writing, because it's so rhythmic, is able to drive the song without needing all these electronic elements. We talked about it on the Tendencies episode, but I'm sure you and I both had a hesitation to touch anything about the song.
Right.
When we first started, because it's this song has been here forever.
It's been sitting there for a really long time.
I don't want to touch it. I feel weird, going into the production that I've known now for 2 years, 3 years. But the first thing that you did, I remember, was you started playing the guitar.
Right.
And you had me retrack the piano so that it sounded like my voices when I did it live.
Yeah, well, yeah. The first step was just to play on top of what was already there, what we had played, what we'd been playing. And I mean, especially when we started doing the production list, we'd also been in quarantine and had done hella live stream shows. So we'd played the song acoustically a lot.
Yeah.
So it was that version of it was so ingrained that I'm like, yeah, it's a kind of a no-brainer to bring that to the production.
Even the harmonies, I
Yeah.
love the harmonies. Like that sort of just came because what are you going to do live? You're going to
Yeah.
have us sing in unison. Like, you brought those harmonies to the table, and then all of a sudden, like the song felt, was just punched up so much.
Yeah. But what I think what was really interesting about the production process was that alone was not enough. Like just like recording guitar and recording piano, it still didn't feel right. Like just sitting with it in that version, it was like, okay, like it just kind of sounds like you slapped some piano and some guitar on this electronic beat. Like it took a little bit more finesse and like kind of peeling away some of the layers. I remember there was definitely one production session where it went from being, before we added the live drums and like the cellos and everything, there was one session where I feel like it went from being like, I think we can make this to work, to like, okay, now it works.
Right.
And I think a lot of it had to do with like replacing a lot of the percussion sounds that were just really aggressive and like finding the rhythm.
The kick was so heavy.
The kick was so heavy.
Yeah.
And the snare was all over the place. And there was like really weird clicky percussion because it was back at the time when like I was obsessed with like the most pretentious percussion ever, that was cool in a vacuum. Like if I just soloed the drum bus, it sounded like that's really interesting sound design, but it wasn't working for the song. So I had to like kind of like go back in with a scalpel and be like, okay, what actually needs to be here, and like what, now that I know more all these years later, like what just utilitarian, like, okay, that's a better snare sample. Like I'm gonna put a little shaker here just to make sure the subdivision is represented. Like I'm gonna add some high like vocal choppy like ambient shit just to fill out the like mid range. And like once I did all that kind of stuff and it wasn't just like piano on top of these really hard drums, then it was like, okay, now this feels like what We're Fine should theoretically feel like.
What is also interesting about like the production process that some people might know or not know, but whenever you make a song, your computer has to do a lot of math.
Right.
Like your computer is running major plug-in chains, and as much as you want to like bounce down stuff, if you have to make like even a small edit or like a small adjustment, that would mean that you have to bounce it down again and again and again. So when we started adding the organic elements, we had to have a separate session
Right.
for the organic elements, which in a lot of ways I think helped us out because it let us focus on the core of the song.
Yeah.
Make sure the core was right, and then okay, here is the session with the drums and the trumpets, and hearing the trumpets, I was like, oh, there's still room in this sort of organic space to be punched up by cello. So
Right.
I didn't know who to call, and we had Johan Lennox on the show like a while back,
Right.
and Johan is like an incredible arranger. His whole bag is these great string arrangements for these major artists. So I asked him like, who do you got? And he recommended Isaiah Gage. And
A legend of the game.
holy crap, did he bring it?
Yeah.
I will never forget when he just, mind you, this happened 4 weeks ago.
Right.
But for the rest of my life will never
Yeah.
forget when he sent his first cello pass. It was just the cello stems and what that sounded like. There was just so much warmth and life and energy to it. Because that was his bag. He just knows how to do that.
Yeah.
Like we sort of had an arrangement, but he was like, I get what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it was like a little
He
big.
very nicely was like, I get what you're trying to do, but I got you.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
don't worry. Like, which, and we'll talk about this in a later episode. He also did for Butterflies in just an incredible way, which is a song that's on different plans. But just hearing the trumpet, like that first pass, just hearing the trumpet, the cello, the drums, all of it coming together, that really just hit me. One of the things that we started doing around making Don't Like Me, because we wrote Don't Like Me. We also wrote a song called Still Sucks. But we started really getting into doing gang vocals.
Right.
And I'd love to know your thoughts on it, but I think that what I love about doing gang vocals on a song is, one, it's now becoming part of our sound. Two, it's a kind of call back to our sort of pop punk or like stomp and holler folk roots.
Right.
Three, it is a very sort of cathartic way of getting a lot of emotion out into the song.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, when we make these vibey tracks, we have to kind of be like a little bit more restrained. And it's nice to like be able to punch it up with like every song that is sad, I want to yell.
Right.
And we get an opportunity to do that. And it's just fun to do. Those are my sort of rationales for having these gang vocals, like gang vocals in general, becoming a sort of consistent part of our sound.
Yeah. Well, and it's just from a pure production perspective, like they kind of always sound good. You know, it's like doubling a vocal, but it's less clinical and sterile than just getting the vocalist who's singing the song to do a double, because then it's just like adds more of the same frequencies. But there's something about off mic, both of us singing together in unison, stacked on top of each other a bunch of times.
You keep saying always, but baby, that's a long time. Be pacing around the house in the middle of the night, saying we're fine, we're fine.
It just adds this like stereo image and this like really nice aura around a lead vocal. Like if the lead vocal is like super dry and up front, and then you add a gang vocal to it, it just adds this whole other like beautiful thing to it. And it kind of, it just kind of always sounds good.
What I like about it too, from a symbolic standpoint, is that when we were using the vocoder as like, this is when like depression's hitting. I feel like every time we bring in the gang vocals, it's for a line that's mad.
Right.
You know, it's like fears aren't justified, but she replies. You know, just hearing the switch from sad to anger. Like there's something very like, because I think it's important emotion to kind of channel. You've also gotten really good on the production side of producing gang vocals. And that was a big kind of turning point for I feel We're Fine, because when we were doing the very speed, I'm like, oh, well, we have this gang vocal. And so in the spirit of Different Plans, like the EP title literally getting its name from us having to change our plans this year, we figured like this song is an experience that everybody's had. Everybody in a sense could write a verse on this song, of their own experiences and how hard it is to bet on always. So we just started to make some calls.
You keep saying always, but baby, that's a long time. Be pacing around the house in the middle of the night, saying we're fine, we're fine.
What I love is that it's this nice like mix of like professional and personal people on it.
Right.
Like I have like my best friends like David and Nicole on it. I have Isabel, who I had a crush on in high school, and she was in my first band. But then also we had like Kira Kosrin and our collaborator Max and Salem, Kurt, who goes by Yoss.
We got Sad Alex on there. We got Amelia on there.
Yeah, Amelia Ali. Yeah, we got a bunch of people who were willing to do it as short notice as possible.
Right.
Because it was one of those things where it was like due like in 3 or 4 days, and I'm like, I have this idea that's gonna be really hard to execute. I'm gonna text everybody and see if we can get it done. But it's nice to be able to hear this like what is essentially a commentary on repeated mistakes and about like love that doesn't work, and realizing that we are, in a sense, surrounded by love that has worked, just not necessarily that specific type of love.
Right.
And so it was nice that there was this embodiment of anger mixed with this embodiment of friendship, and how they sort of coalesce together to be this powerful moment of just not knowing what you can necessarily commit to. And then it just goes to town. I appreciated that. Like, I thought it was just a bit too, like, I was worried it'd be too much, but I'm so glad that like you were on board with the dun 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 at the end.
Yeah.
Because it's intense, What were your feelings as the song was like actually coming together? Like what, because at a certain point, like I was getting the cellos in, I was getting our friends in, but at the end of the day, you make the song happen. And I'm wondering how it felt to be in the driver's seat of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, the song has been on such a journey. It's one of like from that first like moment in the dorms in 2015 when we wrote the chorus. It's always a chorus that I loved. I've had people tell me that like I remember after we played it at when we opened for Transviolet at the Echo, one of my ex's friends told me that was like that's your best song. Like that's the one. It's a chorus that like people have responded to. It's always a chorus that has sat really well with me, and a song that, especially once we started playing it acoustically, I'm like, yeah, this song has a lot of heart, and it feels like a Sleeping Lion song in a really special way. So yeah, like I said, it took a while for it to come together, this final round of it, and it was a daunting process because the song had such emotional weight. I knew how much it meant to you, and how much it had sort of meant to me over the years. There's such a pressure to get it right. Like this is the version, like it's gonna, even still, I'm just like, wow, it's wild that like the version that people are listening to right now, like that's the version of We're Fine that exists. So I think what was, like I said, there was that one session where I feel like it went from being like, I don't know if I know how to make this work, to I just sat down like grit my teeth and was like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna like do what I do, follow my instincts and see where they take me, and like just cleaned it up and make it feel kind of organic and interesting. And then past that point, like I think I had the pleasure of not necessarily having to worry about being in the driver's seat, because so much of what was happening was the other musicians who were on it. Like at the end, really taking it to the finish line didn't feel like it took much from me other than making executive decisions, which we did together. Because what really brings We're Fine to life is the drums and the trumpets and the cellos and the gang vocals.
Which in a lot of ways, like we trusted the musicians to do.
We just called our people and said, do your thing, and everyone did their thing. And that's oftentimes the most fun for me, when I can just trust other people to do their job really well, and then my job is just like putting the puzzle pieces together. That's really what it felt like.
I love that the last piece of the puzzle was when we recorded the gang vocals with Sophia, Kira, and Max.
Yeah,
because we were all in a small room with one mic. And it reminded me of when we were in the dorms and how we used to do the gang vocals for, By Now You Won't.
Right.
And there was something really special about ending the song in a place that felt so familiar to where the song started.
Right.
We sort of joke around that like being able to go to somebody else for mix and master is enjoyment insurance.
Yeah.
Because I don't even want to say like you would mix and master Sleeping Lions stuff, exclusively, until we met Eric.
Right.
And even so, like the first song that he would only master. The first song that we ever really had mixed by somebody else was Balance.
Right.
Our friend Mike Panic, who's in Transviolet, he's been our mixing and mastering guy. So what was so nice was knowing, okay, we're going to have all of these elements. We're going to throw so much stuff at this song. And then we're not going to have to worry about how they, blend together, because we get to pay somebody to do that. Somebody who's got better ears and is smarter than us in that regards to do it. And I think in that sense, like Mike did an incredible job and Eric did an incredible job to really make those moments feel huge.
Yeah.
Is there a piece of sound design that you really love and want to sort of call out?
One of the last pieces of production I did on this, and this you would need bad ears to hear this, on the guitar layer, one of the last things that I did to it, I'm like, that just needs like a little extra sauce. I added a Celeste sample, like a really pretty kind of glockenspiel bell, and then threw it through a phase distortion and a reverb. So it's like this really pretty bell on top of it that's like distorted to all hell and like washed away in the background. What I love about Logic's phase distortion is it just fucks stuff up in a really pretty way, and it was kind of the perfect sound for this guitar thing, like to add this like extra kind of sparkle on top of it. And it's just kind of part of the sound.
Well, I love the guitar too, what it does for the song, because it's like everything's this like pretty atmospheric stuff, and there's just this one gritty element to be like, oh, you're not safe, like you're not you're not out of the woods, I love the intro, like because what it originally was us just singing the chorus, and then you recorded the very speed gang vocals, intending to record regular vocals at some point over it,
right?
But then we just never did, because it sounded so cool that it opened up with
you keep saying always, but baby, that's a long time to be pacing around the house in the middle of the night saying we're fine, we're fine.
I really appreciated that it was like this intro and then this tape and this riser.
Yeah.
And the riser is a sort of blend of like, just like a little bit of fuzz, but also like a rewinding of a tape.
Yeah.
And so again,
and there's if you listen really carefully, you can hear the sound of a film projector in the beginning. And that's just like, I love that sound. I've used it in a couple things that I've been working on, just because it's like, it's just such a good sound. It just feels so like warm, and it really puts this kind of filmic edge on whatever's underneath it. And I feel like that's especially the vibe we're going for with a lot of our stuff.
Is there a lyric that resonates with you?
Yeah,
even though it's my stories.
Yeah, I was wondering that. Yeah, I think the obvious one is because it's such a simple, like, on the nose lyric, but it is. I think a really relatable one is, I keep repeating these mistakes like they're new for me to make.
Repeating mistakes like they're new for me to make.
I think there's something that everyone can kind of relate to in that. But I think the chorus always got to me, because the chorus always reminded me of myself. The pacing around the house in the middle of the night saying we're fine, like this kind of nervous energy, like the idea that something is very obviously wrong, but you're muttering under your breath like, we're fine, everything's fine, it's fine. That I think is something I can very much relate to as a human being, and I think that's one of the reasons the song always stuck with me.
Well, it was this idea of like too of so much of my relationships are sort of tainted by worrying.
Right.
And so how healthy or how good is this thing that, we are fighting for always when on the other side, like always means panicking on a regular basis,
right.
Which is a repeated mistake. I think, if there's anything I've learned in just sort of growing up, it's been like, worry less and trust, more, etc. The lyric that hit me like from the jump was actually at the end. I wouldn't mind waiting around, but we both have our lives to live.
Right.
And we knew what we could live without.
No, I now wouldn't mind waiting around. We both had our lives to live. We knew what we could live without.
Because that's the thing is like, we put these relationships on pedestals. But the truth of the matter is that where we are right now, I'll never forget your mom actually gave you advice that I then heard, or she gave me advice. There's the idea of like when you're in your 20s, you kind of have to be selfish because you're
right.
building your life. And so I know that no matter how intense a relationship is or whatever, that, my priorities are to Sleeping Lion, to this thing that we're building, to my own growth as a person, etc. And so, as much as I, in a sort of grand romantic way, would be like, I'll wait for you. The truth of the matter is that like, anybody can live without anybody.
Right.
And just sort of the fact that that at your, in your core is kind of a non-starter, so to speak,
right.
but at the same time is a really powerful thing to understand, because that's how you let go. Is like there will be more, like what we used to say back when we would go through hard stuff, we'd say there will be more and they'll be better.
Right.
Because there has to be, like, because you're just getting smarter and understanding yourself better, etc. I think that's all we have to say about the song, it's so crazy that you listener get to listen to it because, it's a new song for you. And for us, it's like,
that chorus was written in 2015. It's old baloney.
It's old baloney, but it means something still. And I hope that you can hear it, and I hope that you can hear the growth, all we learned both as producers, writers, and people, the friends we made who were able to be a part of it. We have old friends, and new old friends on it, which is just so nice.
I hope that all of the kind of blood, sweat, and tears that went into this song, whether consciously or subconsciously, connect with people. I hope that people are able to get invested in the story of the song and see themselves in it, and hopefully have some kind of catharsis. And in hearing you tell your story and hearing all of our friends come together to sort of augment that story in music.
And I'm curious to see how it evolves, whether we have people adding their verses or
right.
we write more verses and stuff, in a very real way, our lives are just verses,
right?
Verses or choruses that haven't happened yet or are in the process of happening. So it's cool to have this be a time capsule of not just the dorm, but Big Bear and the quarantine.
Right.
It captures so much in so many relationships and so many new skills or new ideas or new sentiments. It's just, I'm really curious to see how it connects with you, listener. So please check out our new single, We're Fine. If you haven't listened to it and you've heard us talk about it, I thank you, but listen to it so it all makes more sense. Show it to your friends, show it to your exes who you're cool with. And I really hope you feel something when you listen to it, because we definitely felt a lot while making it.
You keep saying always, but baby, that's a long time. Be paced around the house, middle of the night, saying we're fine, we're fine. You keep saying always, but baby, that's a long time. Be paced around the house, middle of the night, saying we're fine, we're fine. And I know I know.
We would like to thank Alan C. for supporting Talking Lion on Patreon and Isotope.